This is Transparency, a podcast by Gender Dysphoria Alliance, hosted by Aaron Kimberly and Aaron Terrell. Each week we'll be joined by people who have personal or professional experience with gender dysphoria and physical transition. We'll also discuss how our trans experiences relate to the concept of gender identity. Join us for a compassionate yet heterodox approach to the question of trans.
Welcome back to Transparency, everyone. This week, we're excited to talk to Julian, who is a trans man coming to us from Germany. Welcome, Julian.
Thanks for having me.
So I would, where we would like to dive in, I would just like you to maybe just say a few words about yourself and what you do and who you are.
Right. So I'm 23. I live in Germany, but my parents are from Eastern Europe. And yeah, but I was born here and I'm a full-time university student. I study languages to become a teacher as of now. And yeah, I've had gender dysphoria for as long as I can remember. And I socially transitioned about 3 years ago. And yeah, the framework that I use to make sense of my experience kind of shifted over time. And yeah.
So let's maybe kind of start maybe at the beginning, and I'd love to just hear what your experience of gender dysphoria was like as a kid. So what are some of your earliest memories of it?
So actually, I was aware of the gender dysphoria before anything else, before who I was attracted to, or anything like that. So I remember one of the first thoughts I had was just I was just confused, and I tried to make sense of it. And for example, I thought that maybe surely I was born male, but maybe my parents wanted a girl, and so they asked the doctor to make me a girl or something like that. I also tried to make sense of it in there was never any confusion about what sex I was. But I thought if I was a girl, then probably all the other girls feel like me too. And I thought every girl wanted to be a boy. And I thought maybe because what do girls have to do with boys? They have crushes on them. They want to marry them when they're older. And I thought maybe they do that to become boys. And like as a kid, I just tried to come up with stories why I was feeling the way I felt. And yeah, I kind of anxiously awaited puberty because I knew it was going to happen, but until it happened, I still had sort of the hope that it wouldn't happen to me and that I would just go through male puberty maybe. Yeah.
You kind of thought maybe puberty would fix things for you.
Yeah, I thought so. And also not necessarily in the male direction. I also thought maybe I would just grow out of it because nobody else I knew had that problem. And yeah.
Yeah, I had that same experience where I thought, oh, when I go through puberty, that'll fix it. I'll realize I'm really supposed to be a girl once that happens. So yeah, it's relatable.
Yeah.
Actually, we had a whole day at school of sex ed. I think I was like 11 or 12, and they separated us into boys and girls, and we did all sorts. It was a whole day, and I also remember we did a meditation about our bodies changing and whatnot. And that it was okay. So actually, in hindsight, this sounds like a good preventative measure for gender dysphoria, and I just remember laying there and kind of waiting for something to happen, but it didn't. So yeah, and I was just confused. I didn't know what all of that meant, and yeah.
That seems to be a pretty common gender dysphoria experience of experiencing something but not knowing how to make sense of it, and the way that we need to kind of make up stories and to try to make sense of it. It sounds like that's what you were doing is trying to come up with some explanation that would help to make sense of why you felt that way.
Yeah, definitely.
How
And
old
it's
how old were you when you first kind of learned about transgender people or gender dysphoria?
that's actually tough to answer because I don't consciously remember hearing anything about it. But I do remember at like 12, 13 maybe, or actually later, maybe 13, 14, when puberty really started for me, and I noticed my body changing, and I didn't want that. And I remember thinking when I'm 18, because at 18 you're a legal adult in Germany, and I thought as an adult you can do whatever you want. So I remember thinking when I'm 18, I'm gonna ask a doctor to make me a boy. And I don't recall hearing anything about trans or surgery or anything like that prior to that, but I must have gotten the idea somewhere. So I don't really know. Consciously, I was, I think, like 17, 18 maybe, because also kind of late, um, because I did my best to avoid anything LGBT, because at that point I already saw my gender dysphoria and the like the gender nonconformity as something that I had to get rid of, and I didn't want to be associated with anything LGBT. And I was called a lesbian before I even knew what that was, as an insult and all that. So yeah, it took me until I was 18 to actually find information. And when I found it, the only thing I found was um, this idea that everybody has a gender identity that you have to figure out, and that sometimes with trans people it just doesn't match with their biological sex, and that it varies independently from sexual orientation. So I thought, okay, first I need to figure out the gender thing, and then I need to figure out the sexual orientation, because I had to consider the possibility that I could be a gay trans man or something like that. So yeah, I was 18.
Are you attracted to men or women or both?
Right, so that took me a long time to figure out, because of the possibility that I could be, a gay trans man, and with that framework. But now I realize that, like, I don't know, years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I realized that I'm actually exclusively same-sex attracted, and I've always been. But I had, I was confused, because for a while I tried to suppress the gender dysphoria, and I tried to sort of channel it and make it attraction towards boys, when in reality I envied them. And now I couldn't care less about pursuing male partners or anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
In
You were growing
Germany,
up, did you tell your parents how you felt about wanting to be a boy or anything like
I
that?
didn't. I didn't, although I thought about it a couple of times, and I couldn't get myself to do it because I was also ashamed of it.
Yeah.
And I don't really know why, because well, nobody else was like me, so that's probably why. But yeah, I don't know. And this is also why it came as a surprise to them, because I thought, or I wanted to deal with the problem myself. So I tried for a while. I tried to really conform to feminine gender roles, and yeah, that didn't work. So I think I told my sisters or my friends. They knew. Like I always, when we were playing like different characters or like anything like that, I would always pick a male name and be the boy character. So they knew.
did they ever ask questions about that? Like before you actually told them, did they ever think that it was strange or ask questions about why do you always pick male names or male characters?
Not really. Actually, they were pretty accommodating, in the sense that they sometimes they would notice when I would force myself to play a girl character, and they would say, hey, "You can be the other one as well. You can be the male one as well." So yeah, but I also had like sort of negative experiences, people not understanding and calling me and it's and everything, the typical things. But it didn't, at that time it didn't affect me because I didn't understand what their problem was. Because to me, the gender nonconformity wasn't a problem. It was how other people reacted to it that made me uncomfortable with it.
Did your parents ever pick up on? Did they ever wonder, like, why do you want your hair short, or why do you dress that way? Like, what did they pick up on?
They didn't. I think they did pick up on something, but they didn't directly address it. It was always just sort of when I went shopping with my mom, she would ask me, "Do you really want that shirt?" Because she would imply you would look like a boy. And do you really want your hair that short and everything? Yeah, along those lines. And then one time I remember I was playing a video game with my sisters, and I picked a male character, or a character that I specifically picked a female character, but made her look like a boy. And then my parents would say, "Oh, that looks like a boy," and kind of humor me. I don't know if that's the right word, but kind of make fun a little. But and I remember my dad asked me when I was in 7th grade, like 13 maybe. I was he asked me if I had a boyfriend, and I just reacted like ew, no. Like how could you think something like that of me? And because at that time it didn't occur to me that I didn't I wasn't straight. And but I just remember being like shocked that he would even assume that, and I didn't understand why. But
I think maybe he was fishing for some answers, like maybe
I think so, but it didn't
It's been his way of like opening up the conversation.
Maybe, but he quickly he withdrew, and he just stopped. We never talked about. He just said, just let me know when you have one. Like, just let me know when you have a boyfriend. I was like, yeah, okay. That didn't happen. Although I really did try. I never actually got to dating boys, but I would think. Once I decided that gender dysphoria and gender nonconformity, that was a problem, and that I didn't want to have that, and I tried to conform to feminine gender roles. I went sort of step by step. First, I grew my hair out. Then I dressed more femininely. Then I thought, okay, I'm still not happy. Maybe I need a boyfriend, because all the girls in my class had boyfriends. So I thought maybe that's why I'm not happy. Maybe I need that. So I would sit in class and sort of think about which boy in my class would be the least, the least undesirable option for me. And I thought, okay, by the end of the year, I'm gonna get this boyfriend. And obviously that didn't work, but I just really, really wanted to get rid of any like LGBT thing, because right, so Eastern Europe, the cultural background is very homophobic and also religious Catholic, and I always grew up with the impression that like homosexuality was a choice, and so was for example, mental like depression, you just need to follow the or lead the life that the religion says is good, and if you just pray and everything, then you will be happier. But
so if hypothetically, if you had come out to your family as gay or like a lesbian, what how would they have reacted, do you think?
I think they wouldn't have taken it seriously at all. Even now, I don't think they will ever see me as anything but a heterosexual woman, although that's kind of absurd to me. But just an example, I go to Poland to visit my grandfather, and I visit the neighbors, and the first thing I get asked by the neighbor's grandmother is when I'm gonna get married, and if I already have a boyfriend and everything, and I can present as masculine or I can look as gay as I want, it won't be acknowledged. So yeah, no matter what I do, trans or gay, it's the same thing to them.
They're probably trying to coerce you into the the life that they want rather than
Yeah.
like. So I'm wondering if the more masculine you're presenting, the more they're going to go in the direction of get a boyfriend.
Yeah, at this point, I think I've looked in gender non-conforming enough for enough time so that they kind of talk about it less, or they ask me less, and they avoid the topic because it's uncomfortable for them. But I also recognize that at least my parents, they don't want any harm for me. They just have their own idea what's good, and yeah, but it's fine. I'm okay with the situation now, but it was rough for a while.
So then you said you encountered this idea that everyone has a gender identity, and
Yeah.
Did that initially make sense to you? Did that appeal to you, or did it seem to be an answer to what you were experiencing?
Yeah, so at first I was very confused by this whole concept because I also immediately stumbled upon the gender spectrum idea in non-binary, and you had to figure out where on the spectrum you are. But all I knew was from my experience. All I knew was just my experience, and my experience was very specific. There was no confusion about what I wanted when puberty started. I wanted the male puberty. It wasn't. And I just wanted to be a boy, like physically male. That's, yeah, simple. But so initially I was very confused, and I also remember when I first told people, I tried to explain that to them, which looking back now is embarrassing to me because it's I think it's just wrong, this idea. But yeah, so I was kind of confused myself, but over time I thought, because there was also the concept of internalized transphobia, and I thought I had that. I thought I didn't understand this gender identity thing because I was just internally transphobic against myself, and so I try to work on that. So I try to accept it, and I try to think of myself like really as a man in a just who happened to be born in the wrong body, and that I was just like any other man, and I'm sort of entitled to hormones and to all of that because I'm really a man. But I no longer think that way. So, and I also used to believe that my brain was somehow male, and that if you, or not necessarily even that the brain was male, because I also knew that the research just wasn't there, but I thought surely in the future they will find something, or there must be something like a gender identity, because otherwise my experience wouldn't make any sense, and I couldn't bear the idea that I was just that the transition was a choice. I couldn't, because it was would be too shameful, and too I would feel too much like I was hurting my family, for example, on purpose. Because if it was a choice, then why don't you choose differently, right? So I kind of relied on the gender identity framework for that.
Yeah, it does help with that kind of those negative thoughts about it all. What changed your mind? Like what kind of snapped you out of it?
Honestly, it was the detransitioners stories, and especially like butch lesbians, because I realized, okay, at first I thought they weren't really trans to begin with, or they didn't have the true gender dysphoria. They just didn't have the male identity that I had, or yeah. And then I realized they are really no different from myself, and yeah, that, and it was, I think, a gradual process. So I kept hearing more and more stories, and yeah, I sort of forced myself to listen, because obviously I also didn't want to make a mistake, and then it sort of accumulated, and one day, and it was very sudden. I just woke up, and I thought, my first thought was, this is bullshit. Like, there's no way people can't be trans. What are you doing? Yeah, and it was after, like, the night before, I was out with friends, and I had a great time. They all called me he, they all called me Julian, and it was great. And I thought, you're at that point now. What you never thought you would get there, and somehow still there's still some unresolved, like, identity thing, because before I came out, I felt like I was lying to people because I was really a man, and they saw me as a woman. And then after I came out, I started feeling like I was lying again, because obviously I wasn't a man, and I made people call me he and everything. So yeah, after that, I just realized, okay, this can't be it. This doesn't make any sense. There's no evidence, and at the end of the day, it's like nobody's forcing me to go and change my name, or make doctor's appointments to get on testosterone, or anything like that. And my first like reaction was, or the only logical consequence for me was, in that moment, was, I need to, like, obviously I'm just a butch lesbian, whatever, and I need to detransition. So I actually went back. I talked to my parents. They were very happy about that, because I went back to my birth name for a while. And yeah, I tried to unpack sort of the maybe internalized homophobia that was going on, and misogyny, because given my background and culture my parents came from, it's inevitable that you have some sort of internalized homophobia. But I also like, it didn't trying to integrate the dysphoria into my like a female identity. It didn't work. It worked to a degree, because I now no longer feel entitled to hormones or to a male body, but I also realized that I still like being referred to as he, although I won't demand that people call me that, and I still want to be seen as male by just in everyday life. And yeah, sort of felt forced to make me think of myself as a butch lesbian, because I never, the gender dysphoria came before anything else, and I only ever saw myself as a boy in childhood and growing up. Yeah, so I struggled with that. Yeah, and as it stands right now, I'm back to going by Julian, and yeah, I also immediately after I had that realization, I called a therapist and made a therapy appointment. So I'm now back in therapy, and I'm giving myself more time to figure things out. Yeah, but overall, I'm now pretty happy with my situation. And yeah, see how it goes.
Do you know any butch lesbians? Are you connected to any community there in the, like, I know you've said that you've
Yeah.
kind of tried to stay away from the LGBT, but do you have any gay or lesbian friends?
I have a I don't know, and I don't have any lesbian or butch lesbian friends. I have gay male friends, one of which also briefly identified as trans, but is now back. And yeah, no, I'm not really immersed in the LGBT community. So that's also a problem, I think, because if I been more connected to the LGBT community in real life, I wouldn't have had to rely on the information from the internet as much. And I think, yeah, that would have been much more healthy than what I was doing, because the only exposure I had was over the internet. So,
Do you live
yeah.
in a fairly small community?
Yeah,
Yeah.
very rural, Bavarian. It's Catholic. It's everything. Yeah.
Do they
Yeah.
teach that gender identity stuff in schools there?
I don't think so, but I think it's starting to I think there are workshops in some schools where people from external like companies or organizations come to schools and maybe have an afternoon of like LGBT stuff. I didn't have any of that. And at university, it's generally accepted as like that there are more many genders and gender identities and everything. So yeah, for example, my professor, he tried to come up, or he used male and female as an example for binary antonyms, which the definition is that there is a one extreme and the other extreme, and they are mutually exclusive. And then he kind of awkwardly added, but I'm sure that there are more things in between or something like that. So it's just not directly, but yeah, awareness is starting to spread in general.
What is the process for starting hormones there?
So it's there are no fixed rules or regulations. Just how do you say? It's a recommendation to be in therapy for at least 6 months, and then 12 months of real life test. But I went to therapy for 18 months, and yeah, I've been socially transitioned for over 3 years now. And my endocrinologist expect or demanded that I do at least 12 months of real life test. But yeah, I also canceled that appointment to start testosterone because I started questioning again, and yeah, as of now I haven't made a new one, but yeah. So usually that's the way it goes, but there are also cases, depending on which therapist you go to, where you can get your letter to start hormones after 2-3 months, maybe, depending on who you go to. But yeah.
Sounds like the informed consent model hasn't arrived there yet. Hopefully
No, not yet.
won't.
Not yet.
Are there wait lists? Like I know in the UK, there's like, months and years long wait lists for transition treatment. Is that the case there in Germany?
No, there isn't one like centralized healthcare organization or anything like that. And I think in the UK they also have the like gender clinic specifically for that, and they don't have that here. Yeah, there's private health insurance and state-o, I don't know, like from state health insurance, which most people have. And yeah, the only problem maybe is that for appointments with specialists in certain fields like endocrinology or yeah, you have to wait a little longer to get an appointment. But yeah.
It sounds a lot more like I'm sorry. I thought Germany had. I thought you had nationalized healthcare like they do over there. The system there actually sounds a lot more, or the lack of system sounds very much more similar to how things are done here in the U.S., where it's kind of like you just sort of, go to this specialist for this thing, get this letter, go to this specialist for that thing, and you kind of do it on your own. Whereas I think in Canada as well as in the UK, it's more like there's like a track that you're put on. Specific clinics, yada yada, for these things.
Yeah. So everybody pretty much has. Everybody is entitled to healthcare in Germany, so it is universal. But yeah, there's the private one and the a universal one, but or not universal, but from the state. Yeah, most people are on the state thing, and you pay. I think I don't know how much you pay per year, but yeah, if you're sick, you can go to the doctor for free, and yeah.
Right.
Would your surgeries be covered too? Like if you did get a mastectomy, that would be covered by both the state plan and the private plan?
Yeah, it would. Yeah, you have to get additional letters, and for usually for the letters you already get them when you try to change your name illegally, because you have to get letters from 2 separate psychiatrists or people who are elected to do the evaluation for name change. And usually you just submit those letters to the healthcare insurance, and they would cover that. They will also cover phalloplasty and all the big surgeries, and if you want.
And do you have surgeons there, or would you have to leave the country to get surgeries?
No, there are surgeons, and I think not only in specific cities, but anywhere, or in more places. There are sort of places where it's more popular to go there for surgery, but yeah.
Have you heard anything about people's happiness with the surgery outcomes?
Just from social media, and most of them are happy with it, I think. Yeah, but I haven't been thinking much about surgery lately, because for me it seems even more in the future now, even further in the future now, that I just kind of put that on hold for a while and see how it goes for me.
You're watchful waiting yourself. Good call.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that too. That you're being careful, and you're trying to think it all through, and you're going to therapy, and it's. I mean, that sounds wise to be cautious and to be sure about yourself.
Yeah, because I really I was very invested in the gender identity framework. I really believed that it was true, and when that fell apart, it was just a very insecure time, and now I'm just I just really want to make sure, and take it slow.
So now that you don't believe in gender identity theory, what do you believe? How do you make sense of what you believe gender dysphoria is?
So I think to me at least, the homosexual transsexual model applies. To me, the gender nonconformity and gender dysphoria were always sort of tied together. I thought of it as the same thing. I once saw saw a meme that said, like, there's no LGBT, just 50 different types of gay. And that's kind of how I saw it. It was all together. It's tied together for me. That's pretty clear to me now. And I think of I just try to think of it as in terms of my own experience, and I try to analyze what's actually bothering me when I feel uncomfortable, and yeah, see if I can do anything about that. And yeah, I don't see it as this global issue anymore, that I'm just wrong and my body is wrong and all that. And yeah, that's actually been beneficial to my psyche, because yeah, now I feel like I have more control. Yeah, and I don't feel like I need to conform to this identity of trans man, and a trans man needs to do this and that to yeah, and it's just what you are, and there's no way out of it. And yeah, now it's more my ambitions to, or my desire to still transition, or yeah, go by male pronouns and all that, is now more something that I just want, and it's not something that I feel like I need to have, because otherwise I can't live or anything like that. It's yeah, I'm more relaxed.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you find there's kind of a sense of freedom in letting go of that idea,
Yeah.
that my brain is wrong, I've got to fix my body, kind of thing? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's entirely in your control at that point.
Yeah, also not entirely, because I in the beginning, when or for the short time I went back to my birth name, which was 2-3 months maybe, I started after a while I started feeling very frustrated, because I couldn't make myself feel comfortable the way I was, or say not binding or anything. I tried, and I just the dysphoria, the feeling, physical discomfort was still there. And yeah, I got frustrated, because I thought, what am I doing wrong that I can't make make it go away? Because now that I let go of the framework of gender identity, so why I didn't understand why it didn't go away. And now I just kind of accept that it's there, and just do things to alleviate it. I continue binding, I try to pass, yeah, all that.
That's something that a lot of people don't understand, is because I've heard so many. I mean, Twitter probably isn't a great measure of what everyone thinks and how the world works, but I've seen a lot of comments of people saying, well, if you don't believe in gender identity, then why are you still trans? Why don't you detransition then? As though the experience of gender dysphoria is entirely based on our belief system of gender identity disorder, or gender identity theory. And they're two completely separate things. That the gender dysphoria came first, and then there's different models and frameworks for understanding or trying to understand what gender dysphoria is. But just because we don't grab a hold and believe in one of them doesn't mean that gender dysphoria magically disappears and we're okay.
Yeah. Also, yeah, same with any other like phobias or anxieties. It's just because I have a friend who's very scared of flying in an airplane, and doesn't matter to if you say flying statistically is the safest way of traveling. It doesn't lessen the anxiety. Yeah, so that's kind of how I see it. But yeah, and it's worse some days, better others. It kind of depends.
I was going to ask about that, if you've noticed that sometimes it seems to get worse or better. Have you connected that to anything in particular?
Yeah, I did actually. I realized that when I'm alone, it gets much worse, because when I'm around people, whether they, in the beginning, being with people who I came out to and who called me he and called me Julian, it alleviated the dysphoria. And then after I realized that the gender identity thing was basically a lie, I also started to feel okay with the female pronouns. And when I was with my family and with my parents, who still call me she, and my birth name and everything, I try to ignore that, and so when I was in a fixed like social circle or setting, and I had established some sort of role in there, that's when it got less, because I forgot about it. I just spent time with people. But when I'm alone and focusing on myself, then it comes back.
It's interesting because I wonder if for some people it's the opposite, that if they're around other people, because I think, trying to remember what it was for me, if it felt worse when I was alone, or I think for me it felt worse when I was around people.
Yeah, depends on the people I'm around. I think if I'm in a group of guys, then it gets worse. But if I'm surrounded by women, then I kind of stick out and feel more masculine in relation to that, to them, and that kind of makes it better. And that's one of the concepts I try to apply to myself when I was trying to get rid of the dysphoria in other ways other than transitioning. I thought that if I were to transition, I would probably be a below average masculinity wise man, and when I'm seen as a female but presenting in a masculine way, then I'm already far more masculine than the other females, and I try to frame that as a positive thing for me and for my dysphoria. And but that works sometimes.
That's a very good point. That's very very smart. I've noticed that when people if they're just gender nonconforming but maintain their own sex, they look quite, it can be more so applied, I think with the male to female type, whereas like they can look quite feminine as men, but then as soon as you start putting on the femininity and trying to look like a woman, that's when the fact that you're male really stands out. So it kind of can accentuate that not only that obviously the attention, but the those your own sex becomes more magnified when you're trying to present as a different one.
Whereas I've heard I don't know if this is true for the trans women, but I've definitely heard a lot of trans men say this, that if before they transitioned, they felt like they really had to project masculinity. So they felt like they were almost like amping it up and performing masculinity and to try to compensate for the fact that they weren't men. And then when they transitioned and their body was doing that job of signaling to other people that they were male, that they actually then felt like they could take ownership of the more feminine aspects of their personality that they didn't feel they could before.
Yeah, that's also something I noticed on social media, like a lot of trans men that I followed or just saw online in the beginning of the transition. They were very like just stereotypically masculine, very he him everywhere, and then sort of later when they already had transitioned for a few years, maybe, then they switched their pronouns to they them or something like that. And I don't think their gender identity changed or anything like that. I think they just loosened up and the dysphoria got managed in a different way, or enough so that the gender presentation doesn't matter anymore. Also feel like growing up, gender is much more important than it is in adulthood, because I do remember as a kid and as a teen, people were much more worried about being gender conforming than there are like in their mid-20s now. My friends, like obviously none of them are 100% feminine or masculine, and they just don't care. And maybe that's also a developmental thing, that in the beginning it's more important.
Yeah, I think everything certainly in teenagehood is kind of heightened. You're trying to perform adulthood, and you're kind of and then as an adult you care less about performing. I also think I wonder though in Germany versus the U.S. and I don't know if Canada's this way as well. I think things are typically more gendered here than there, from what I've observed.
Yeah, I feel like that too.
Yeah.
I've actually been surrounded by sort of gender non-conforming women during my childhood. I played soccer, and they played soccer, and we had a women's team, and I played on a women's team for a long time, and they really like they weren't feminine in that sense. They were feminine in their sexual orientation because they like men, but otherwise, yeah. My mom has short hair. I have plenty of women in my life who had short hair. So yeah, when I first started to tackle the gender dysphoria when puberty started, and I felt like I needed to solve this problem because my body was developing this way, and I didn't want it to, but I obviously have to live with it somehow. I also questioned if maybe I felt that way because I didn't have role models that I could identify with. But back then, I didn't consider homosexuality or homosexual role models as a possibility. So I just thought maybe, for example, I tried to find singers who played guitar because I play guitar, and I tried to identify with them, and yeah, but it didn't occur to me to look for like homosexual role models because I was confused about my sexual orientation. So,
Well, especially because the gender dysphoria does typically start before we realize what our sexuality even is.
yeah,
which I think for some of us can derail us from accepting a gay or lesbian identity if we've already settled on kind of a self concept.
yeah, it's weird because I always growing up I always imagined myself as a boy with a girl in the future, and yeah, so it was always heterosexual. And then later I tried to think of myself as the girl and with the boy, so I would fit in. Yeah, but the homosexuality, it's like I didn't have a concept of homosexuality, and yeah, that's. I recently talked with my gay male friend about this, who briefly identified as a trans woman, and he was confused why I didn't have like why I didn't have this concept of homosexuality growing up, because to him it was like he thought of himself as a boy who liked boys, but I never thought of myself as a girl. So yeah, I don't know why that happened. Maybe that would have changed things.
Yeah, that is interesting. When I was young, like the thought of looking up to like a woman as like a role model didn't occur to me. I was always compared myself to the boys, and I looked up to men. And so I think I was never. I don't think I was as introspective as you, as wondering like why am I doing this? How can I correct this? That didn't occur to me.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't occur to me either. Yeah, I was the same way. Like all of my
right.
my heroes and role models were men. Not that there weren't women that I admired, and I
Yeah.
had some strong women in my life, but it just never occurred to me like I'm one of them.
Yeah.
Like yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's yeah, my mother always tells me I think too much. So I was always a pretty introspective person, I think. Also because I always wanted to do everything right. I wanted to be like model student, model everything, and that didn't. The gender nonconformity didn't fit that. So yeah, I really try to change, and I actually put an embarrassing amount of energy and time into presenting more feminine, because I I also had the mindset that if you don't like something about yourself, change yourself, and assume the responsibility for yourself. So I thought, okay, what comments did I ever get about being too masculine or whatever? And then, yeah, for example, classmates told me I walk like a guy, or I talk like a guy, or I look like one, and then I I sort of practice walking more femininely. I changed my handwriting because one of my teachers one time assumed that or said that this handwriting on this piece of paper must have been by a boy, but it was mine. And yeah, so I really changed everything, and I spoke in a higher pitch a little bit, but yeah, people still called me a lesbian. I think it must have given off some vibes. I don't know. Seemed inescapable.
Yeah, because you've been in counseling for a while, are you finding that helpful? Like, how does your counselor approach gender dysphoria?
Yeah, so actually had I went to see 3 because not because I wasn't happy with them or anything, but the first were youth counselors, and you can only have therapy there until you're 21. I'm 23 now, so I changed or switched to another one. And the first one was had experience with trans people, and he the main thing we talked about was how much I hated myself for being this way, and I still was in the mindset that I was just trans, and that so to use the term, I was dealing with the internalized transphobia in therapy, but and self-acceptance, and he sort of tried to make me think of it as a natural variation of what a human being could be, and that what I was feeling was to be accepted, and that and I also confronted him with questions like, why even try to transition if I can't ever be a man, and I was very upset about that fact. And he said that that would be, if I transitioned, then that would be my own suffering to bear, and that I had to, that it would be my responsibility to sort of deal with that. In retrospectively, I think that's actually a healthy way of looking at it, like not trying to impose anything on people, but just going into transition with the knowledge that there will be sacrifice, and that you can't always be open, maybe always be open about it, or that you will have to accept the fact that you will always be trans. And back then I didn't want to hear that. I just thought, let him talk. But then the one I am seeing now, he never worked with trans people before, but I explained to him what my concerns were, and how maybe internalized homophobia could have played a role, and and the goal now is to reach stability enough so that I can actually make the decision and just sort of relax a little bit about it, because gender dysphoria is still, like, it persists, and he's trying to help me, like, roll with it and see it to just make the best of it, and however that may look like. And he expressed it like he understood my problem as having, like, sort of 2 sides, like a female one and a masculine one, and they're sort of constantly fighting, and the goal is just to integrate that somehow. And because for me right now, the trans man identity feels most comfortable because I still do wish to be seen as male and nothing less. Or yeah, I would be lying if I said I didn't want to be perceived as male. So that's why I'm for now sticking with that. But yeah, I'm proceeding with caution. And yeah.
So it sounds like for you, counseling has been a helpful process.
Yeah, definitely. And he also like he tells me things that maybe you don't want to hear at that time, but sometimes like a week or two later you realize, oh, the therapist was actually right about that. And yeah, for me it's been a positive experience. But yeah, although I can understand when people are skeptical of therapy, because that was my initial prejudice, also because of the way my mother thought about mental illness and all that, and that it was just, if you take personal responsibility for your mental health, if you go pray and all that, then you'll be fine. But yeah, I found it helpful to go to therapy.
Sounds like you found some good ones too.
Yeah, kind of lucky, because I actually didn't have to search much. Yeah, but it's I know a lot of people who struggle to find one that they're comfortable with or that they find helpful at all, because I also had a third therapist and that really felt like a waste of time, because she didn't she didn't know what to do with me. And then it just she just thought, your only problem is that you don't have the courage to come out, and if you come out, then the problem will be fixed, essentially. Yeah, and then once she established that, then the therapy sessions were about what I did that weekend or what I was going to do next week, and I just quit. Yeah.
Do you have to pay for therapy out of pocket, or is that covered?
No, that's also covered, and I'm very thankful for that, because the only maybe problem that I will have because of that in the future is if I want to become a teacher at a high school, then I will be an employee of the state. I don't know. It's like you and you have to get checked medically to see if you're fit to work your whole life, and if it's to be expected that you won't have any medical issues down the road. And psychotherapy or prior psychotherapy or current used to be a criterion for why they won't let you teach as an employee of the state. You can still teach, but it's not a fixed position. It's complicated. I don't know how to explain that in English. Yeah. So I also don't know if transition or HRT, if that's something that they can exclude me for. Yeah, I really don't know. So far, my experience with professors and sort of authority figures has always been positive, and yeah, I hope it will stay that way.
What's the state of trans politics there in Germany? Are there the debates there about trans women in sports and in the bathroom issues? Is that being discussed there or not yet?
Not yet. At least the sports issue, and bathrooms. I also don't think. What they are actually debating most about, I think, is language. Like, because for example, in English you just say students, but in German you have a female and male form, and they try to I don't know, be more inclusive, and they add an asterisk to the forms. And now when I receive emails from uni, it will say students with an asterisk and the female form behind it. So that's what they're arguing about, essentially. And also the I think could translate as a self-determination law, where you can change your name more easily, because now you need those 2 letters from a psychiatrist, and you need to go to court to get your name changed and name and gender changed. And now they want to make it easier. It's also very expensive to change your name as it stands right now. They have a law that's for intersex people, which costs like 20 euros to change your name with that. But they also explicitly said that it's not for trans people. And I know some trans people who use that as a they abuse the law in a way, that they changed it with the intersex law. But yeah, so far no debates about sports. That's
So right now, the process for changing your name is the same as the process of changing your gender marker on your ID.
Yeah, you do it simultaneously, in the same, with the same form and everything. But you have we now have the possibility to put as a gender to put female, male, nothing, or third gender. That is a possibility.
And so
What's
can
the
you
third gender?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like X or something.
Oh.
It's like it's for intersex people, and that's how it was meant. But yeah, pretty sure people use it for, to express non-binary identities as well.
So is there an expectation that, because you said to start hormones, you'd have to do that 1 year real life experience. So would it be expected that you would have to do all of that before legally changing your name and gender marker, or could you do the legal part at any point in the process?
You could do the legal part at any point officially, but I had called some psychiatrists who do the evaluation, and one of them said that it would be better if I was already on hormones, so they would be sure, or it's I don't think they've had many cases where people try to change their name before hormones, because I also imagine that it would be complicated socially, because if you have to show your ID and if my ID said male, then people would, I don't know, would not believe me, or but there's sort of additional unofficial additional ID you can order online, specifically for trans people. It's by an given out by an organization for intersex and trans people, and it says your pronouns and everything, and I have that. And you can change some things already with it. I was able to change my name at uni with that, but it's not official.
So some places do accept that as ID. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but it's not official. It has the ID number, so that it corresponds with your actual ID. And it also has a short text on the back that explains the situation. So you kind of come out if you show it to people, you kind of come out as trans. But yeah, it looks pretty official.
And I guess if it's a service specifically for trans and intersex people, I guess just by having that card would out you as either trans or intersex.
But people don't know.
Okay.
They aren't aware of. Generally, people have never heard of, or at least the people I came out to have never heard of the concept before. But I'm also, as I said, I live in a small village in Bavaria, and there's not. There's no LGBT representation anywhere.
So that whole gender spectrum stuff and the gender identity that you all found, that was online. That was not anything in your local vicinity, right?
No, not at all. They know what a lesbian is. They know what a gay man is, and maybe trans, but they think of trans as I think either just homosexuals or a woman who decides to become a man, or vice versa.
The full sex change kind of concept.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've a gay male friend from Eastern Europe, and his parents. He explained my situation to them, and they thought it was just an extreme form of homosexuality, which actually, I think James Cantor, I watched an interview with, I think that's how he described it as well. So maybe that's not not that wrong, but I don't know. Yeah, that's and they've never heard about anything LGBT before either. So I think that's just how regular people deal with it. And none of the people I'm around with in real life are under the delusion that I'm somehow male. They're well aware of the fact that I'm female, and that they're that it's the pronouns, for example, are a courtesy thing. None of them. Yeah, and I used to have a problem with that they're sort of humoring me in that way, but now I don't anymore, and yeah, because it is what it is. And yeah, actually, I just came back from a study trip, and it was me and four women and our professor, and they all knew that I was trans, and yeah, they all called me he and all that. But yeah, obviously it was an all-female group, basically, and they didn't exactly treat me. They tried to treat me like a guy, whatever that means. But for example, just language-wise, they would use the male form for me. But yeah, and they wouldn't assume that I was into men. They wouldn't assume that I wanted to wear this or that. And yeah, they didn't expect me to conform to feminine roles. And this is also an aspect that I enjoy about calling myself a trans man, because then the people I'm around know exactly what I mean. I just want to be treated as if I was a man, and yeah, they know how to do that, because I think people who don't know, or strangers who see me as a masculine female, I feel like they don't take my masculinity as seriously as they would if I said that I was a trans man. I think, yeah. Yeah, they wouldn't.
It makes sense. It's just kind of like it's like a shorthand for, culturally regard me as male, even though
Yeah.
I'm not. I think people can kind of wrap their heads around that more than Yeah. All the dysphoria stuff, all the stuff that that we kind of battle with and we try to make sense of. It's like, just for the purposes of interaction, pretend I'm a man. I'm not. But
yeah. And now I also loosen up a bit about it, and I joke about it, and people around me joke about it, and they know, and it's more relaxed. And yeah, I have the luxury of doing that because they are all very accepting and open people, and I know in other places that's not the case. And yeah, I'm kind of lucky that I can be open about it, because I don't feel like I have to hide anything. Because yeah, if I present as female and then the dysphoria isn't acknowledged, and that makes me feel bad. If I present as if I just say I'm a man, and if I pass and all that, then I feel like, yeah, I'm lying again. Yeah.
you've actually had a very similar kind of mental trajectory with all of this that I have. You just got there a lot quicker than I did, because I believed the whole, my brain is male, I have to fix my body, and then I did, right? So, and then about 8 years after the fact is when I encountered the concept started to crumble around me, and I was really reading, like you said, all the detransitioner stories, and it's like, wow, they felt the same way. They it didn't work or whatever, and I don't regret transition at all. But I've come to but it's 8 years later I had to realize, no, I'm not a man. I present this way, I look this way, it makes me feel better, because then I started, because I did that same thing as well. It's like, okay, I reject the fact that my brain is male. None of this was actually necessary, but okay, let me imagine undoing it, and then it's like, whoa, all that dysphoria just comes right on back. So it's like, it worked, but my brain process that led me here was faulty.
That's not a cure, right? It's not a cure for the dysphoria, because as you said, like, if we were to undo this, the dysphoria would come right back. So the dysphoria is still there, but there's
a Band-Aid on it.
Can't imagine the panic people who already transitioned for years must feel when that realization hits, because I already suffered because of I thought I had made just a mistake, and I immediately began questioning how much of my decision to come out and pursue transition was due to the ideology. Like, how much did the ideology make that decision for me? To what degree? I can't imagine already having done something irreversible and then having that realization. Must be not easy.
You'd think, it wasn't actually as upsetting. I think because it always felt wrong. Like, I feel like on a deep level, I knew it was false, and so I think it was just kind of like a convenient story that. So it was, there was a subtle letting go of it, certainly, and it wasn't like in an instant, like you say, you woke up and you were just like, this is all bullshit, For me, it was more like a slow, like a slow dawning. So it was subtle.
The process leading up to that moment, the stories just kept coming up, the transition stories and everything. I think if it weren't for those stories, I wouldn't be at this point now, or maybe I would. I don't know, but it definitely helped. And it's upsetting to me when people try to. When I see comments that detransition people shouldn't share their story because they're giving the trans community a bad rep. It's I think a lot of people will have what do you call that? Rude awakening.
Yep.
Yeah. What was it about the detransition stories that you found helpful?
I realized that they had dysphoria, and what I would also classify as dysphoria, they had it, and I'm really no different. Or at least not to the degree that I thought I was different from them. And then I thought, okay, they felt that way, and now they still, like, or even people who've been taking hormones for years and then still decide to detransition, because I thought maybe, or I thought surely once I hit whatever 5 years transitioned or on testosterone, then there would be no doubt left. But then you see people who've been on hormones for 10 years and still detransition, and even had surgeries and still detransition, and then it sort of falls apart. And also the some of the reactions I got when I came out to people, like, they didn't understand the concept of gender identity. Like, if I say I feel like a man, but that doesn't mean anything, and you doesn't make any sense. So
yeah, I don't know if there is a way of explaining it in a way that's going to make sense to people, because it it's not logical, right? It's and that's why I think it is a disorder of some kind, and there's no way of explaining it to people in a way that they're going to be like, oh yeah, I can relate to that, because unless you have the disorder, it's not going to make any sense.
Yeah, true.
It doesn't even make sense to us at most of the time.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And it's very. It takes for me. It took. The hardest thing was to um, accept that I'm transitioning or I want to transition because it's a choice I make. I made or will make, and not because it's something that I have to do because it's the only way I can exist. So you kind of have to own up to the fact that, look, I have this disorder and it doesn't make any sense, but I'm still doing it because it makes me feel better for the sake of my feelings,
Mhm.
Which seems like a healthier way of going into it than than the way that some people rush into it, or really
Yeah.
believe in a certain concept and tie their whole sense of being to a certain concept and then just dive right in. So it's great that you're really taking the time to think it all through, and it sounds like you're thinking about it really realistically, what to expect. Like, it's not magically going to change your sex, but you're trying to
No.
weigh, would this just make me more comfortable? And this is, this is my choice. And so it's nice just to see how slow and careful that you're being, and thinking it all through.
Yeah. Although I do have to admit, I have moments where I still get that, you can, in this day and age, you can transition and sort of take it and run because it's what you've always wanted. And yeah, don't think too much about it. But I'm a cautious person and I can't let myself do that. So yeah, better safe than sorry.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Good stuff. Well, thanks so much for coming on and chatting with us. It's been a pleasure to talk to you again and hear your story and dive into some of this with you.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to talk about this. And I really enjoy the podcast and I listen to it every week. So yeah, I'm glad if I can contribute.
Good. I'm glad.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Transparency Podcast. If you enjoy our content, please help out our algorithm by hitting like or subscribe. If you'd like to make a donation, follow the link to our PayPal account. On behalf of the Gender Dysphoria Alliance, thanks for your support.